Welcome to the July 31st bhyve production user call. We have Andrew, Hans, Mark, Jan, and myself, Michael, so far, and I have a little bit of news. Do check out the jail call recording. The jail descriptors work and executable jail.conf projects are nearing completion. Thank you, Jan and Jamie, for really working through what those should look like. And while we didn't record it, the OpenZFS call had a great internal discussion about the upcoming summit. You are invited to share your desired topics. They are on the document. The document's wide open. And do register. It takes place in October the 25th to 28th. And a wide open call, the OpenZFS.org website on MediaWiki on OSU OSL is not mobile friendly. There are various skins to make it mobile friendly, but I know absolutely nothing about that. I've reached out on the Fediverse and received some nibbles, but if someone really knows MediaWiki and mobile friendliness and says, oh yeah, just do this, let's talk. And speaking of Eurobhyvecon Lite, while in Spain, I got to talk to Roger, the FreeBSD Zen developer who's spoken many times at bhyvecon, and we had a nice chat at his lovely beachfront home on the Catalonian coast. He will not be attending EuroBSDCon for a reason, so it was about as close as I can get to that. It was delightful. And EuroBhyvecon is scheduled for a special dedicated day along with other added events at EuroBSDCon. And it's still kind of early days, and I would love to hear what themes you want to have covered. Things like bhyve on ARM, where are we at, might be good, and state of the project. And naturally, Silva project, maybe Hazem will roll in. Got an idea on the board for that. And Hans, it sounds like you've done some perhaps remarkable CPU ID work for FreeBSD, and you have, 7 reviews. Without going through those in total depth, it sounds like you've got some summaries, such as the first one needed to get FreeBSD ready.
Exactly. That's just 2 includes missing and 2 headers.
Oh, okay.
I separated that out into separate commit.
Brilliant.
This adds a function called walk config nodes to bhyve, which I need to. No, that's the second one.
That's the second one, okay. Oh, well configured. Cool.
Walk config nodes, which is really useful to, walk over a set of nodes under a parent, which I need for the whole CPU ID stuff, where I don't know beforehand what the options are called.
Got it. And does that mean you can simply say, I want this sort of diff as opposed to specifying every possible flag to make it happy?
No, that's not yet. This is really just for option parsing in general.
Okay, cool.
And
okay, do tell. And I can step through these by just incrementing the number. I'm very glad they're sequential. Good work.
I have to separate out the individual bits.
Mm-hmm. So there is one of several illumos imports, or they all fit in one review?
Really just 5.2,
okay,
which is importing illumos 14485 and a fix for that 16223.
Okay.
There's more in the illumos regarding CPU ID stuff, but that drags in a couple of dependencies which I didn't want to take in yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 5.3 commit.
VM
fixing that I found. Maybe it was intentional by the Oxide guys, I don't know. But I think this is an issue.
Could it be intentional, or is it likely unintentional?
Yes, I really don't think it is. I think it's just an oversight. I don't know. I haven't proposed this commit to illumos yet.
Okay. Cool. Moving on, number 4. Update
Yes,
the IOCTLs to libvmm API. Okay.
it's really just that.
Yeah.
And the bulk of the work is in 5.5.
Okay, let's get to that in just a sec. I will document this.
And this got a long commit message explaining the functionality. I think I want to put that into a man page eventually.
Naturally. Whew. Thank you for being very verbose.
Yeah, it's quite awkward to use, so
Ah,
better explain.
yeah, naturally. And that is primarily documentation, or that's the code heavy lifting to go with it? Let's take a look.
Yeah, that's pretty much the big change to the bhyve user space to do
Got it.
something with UID options.
Yeah, I've got it. Um, okay, moving on. Um, uh, heavy lifting with documentation. And it sounds like a
Yes, this
command
is
line flag.
yeah for bhyve control, so you can get the CPU ID configuration of the vCPU
Brilliant.
in a running VM
Okay.
for basically for verification that it worked.
And
Or rather,
that's to bhyve CTL. Okay. Maybe throw that in the title, but it's not the end of the world. People will know. Wow. Okay, any questions for Hans beyond mine? So based on the previous conversation, in your demo, you had to pretty much uh, give every flag. Do you have a path to making that more kind of exclusive and such that uh, you give the flag you want to change as opposed to specify the entire topology?
well, I haven't done that yet.
But we
This
have a
is
path to it is a question. You have a strategy in mind?
we have a couple ideas how to do this,
Okay,
and
fantastic.
because I think the best path forward there is to leave the kernel bits alone and just in case the user wants to change just one bit, the user space should fetch the CPU ID information using one of the I/O controls that exist, and then modify that and send that back to the kernel as a configuration for the vCPU.
Do you know what Oxide is doing, if anything, to customize those?
They are doing all of this in their Propolis bhyve user space, which
Okay,
is I haven't really looked at their code yet,
no
but I
worries.
suppose it's something like that, or maybe it's even more configurable, or maybe it's not at all, and they just provide presets. I really don't know.
Okay, no worries. Well, this is fantastic news. Thank you so much for that. Welcome, Daniel B.
Hey. Why
Uh,
this stuff works, I think it's really just a draft at this time.
mhm. Well, the fact that Corvin is back up and running and giving it a look is great news. I haven't heard much from him lately. I'm sure he's busy on wonderful things. And I can imagine he and his people have a collective interest in this. So fantastic. And he's showing up more so than Peter or John. Daniel, to catch you up, Hans just gave a delightful overview of his 7 or so reviews for CPU ID work to custom tailor a CPU, which is typically needed for any kind of migration, especially live. And as I see it, crafting a machine that is different from what your host hardware is.
Nice.
Hans, how can people help you beyond reviews, be it financially, be it other strategies? How do we keep this magic happening?
Well, right now, doing code reviews is great. Then I need to write that proposal, or actually finish writing it.
Okay, and I'm happy to help with that. Cool.
Take it from there. If anyone wants to make any donations, fine, great, thank you.
Cool. And it sounds like a few folks have come through, or at least one organization.
If I remember correctly, several hypervisors have some kind of profile where they have similar to the ABI architecture levels. On AMD64, there's something like target, Hasworld, target, Broadworld, Skylake, or Zen 1 or whatever.
Where we want to get to with this. But this is really just the basic.
There's a plumbing for that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, but what I want is there a way you're collecting the kind of CPU ID outputs from reviewers so that we can start collecting what it means to have a certain CPU ID in detail rather than relying on some kind of vendor
Interesting
web page, because not even Intel Arc used to go into that detail.
There is a CPU ID database.
Okay, there is one. We don't have to start our own.
So this already exists. There's some code coming with it to query the database, but that is GPL or LGPL, but we won't need that. And of course, there's the x86 architecture levels, which we can implement as presets.
Nice. That is delightful. Well, keep up the good work.
So,
go ahead, Jan, please.
If I have the same vendor, at least, let's say Intel or AMD of CPU, does this mean that the bhyve guest state, if they both support the same feature set as configured, that now the state is compatible? And I could, in theory, take, I don't know, a dump of a guest to just suspend the guest on a Broadwell system and resume it on a Skylake or something like that?
The question is, where is the state stored right now? I haven't looked at that. And does it, at this time, actually save the vCPU CPU ID configuration? Or does it just pass all the options that were given and pause them again? In the latter case, it would work already. And if not, it's probably just something that needs to be added to the saving and restoring of state.
Because while we don't have true live migration, we have kind of lukewarm migration by the suspending and then resuming. But right now, as far as I know, that requires perfectly identical hardware down to the base frequency.
So this,
because there's not even
having the
TSC
feature
adjustment.
Go ahead,
Wait,
Hans.
why?
So eventually, having this feature will help with migration, but the plumbing for that is not quite there yet.
No, this is only a requirement. This is not a ready-to-use user-facing feature.
Plumbing, as they put it, which is the necessary baby steps to get us there that have been long overlooked. Here is that CPU ID database. I put it in chat. Take a peek. It's in the doc. Daniel, you had something?
Oh, no, I was just going to ask. The frequency has to be the same also? That's just something I didn't know.
As far as I know, FreeBSD during suspend resume does not adjust the TSC, so it will just report it, and operating systems do not expect that to change.
Right.
So suddenly your clocks would be running proportionally faster or slower.
Don't commercial products, and I don't know if KVM, don't they have a solution to that?
Yes,
Well,
they do. Hardware has solutions for that. You can report another TSC frequency to the guest in hardware with a kind of fractional divider
yeah,
on
that's
modern-ish CPUs, so that the hypervisor doesn't have to intercept every read TSC. Yeah,
that's really the KVM and Hyper-V clock that we've been talking about for a couple of years now, which
Yes.
Yuri started to implement. And as far as it hasn't finished yet, that's probably another interesting work to do to
I thought
complete.
modern CPUs had hardware support for that, so that you can still use the TSC because the hardware can just do a linear operation on the TSC, basically scale it with fixed point math and bias, so that you only have to configure a few registers and then read TSC works in the guest. But okay, maybe having a shared memory page is the way. Older implementation went before this hardware feature existed.
So it reminds us of the, was it PV clock, as I recall? And the paravirtualized clock might be an important angle to be it harmonizing two systems for migration.
Yes.
I'm guessing you haven't heard anything from Vitaly for quite some time.
Oh, right, it was Vitaly, not Yuri.
No
Anyway,
worries. How to show? I can reach out, and if it's been those same email threads. So yeah.
well,
Heaven forbid all the things come together in harmony. Cool.
well,
Let's
it's
go
a
ahead.
simple matter of.
A matter of what?
In the end, it's really just a simple matter of programming.
Fair enough. And wetware availability and such, and it sounds like you've had some great moments of clarity and just free of distractions to work on this. So I will do a quick search for my last mail on him. There he is. Okay. We last spoke in February. Ba, 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 ba. Great. I will open that up. Okay. Thank you, Hans. If it hasn't been said, I will say it yet again. And I appreciate that. And I look forward to your proposal, and I'll help you with that in every way I can. I've nudged Hezam, but he's probably busy with something. Silva has been making wild progress. And if you check out the last calls, he's deep into like, Samba and AD and iSCSI handling, because it's like 3 degrees away from being a storage solution like a NAS. And while roaring down the highway talking to Daniel, who I believe is still on, it occurred to me that with anything ZFS based and the sort of sheer inconsistency of the competition having stuff that does stuff, I won't name names, but they're Linux based and they have a GUI that inspired Silva. Having a Zelta based GUI might be the shortest path to a very effective backup management tool. And having used Zelta several times last night to clean up a system now that the companies that are separating know what they want to do. Thank you, Daniel, for Zelta. I will stick with Rod's comment that it's the best backup tool. Well, he's used in like 30 or so years. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you. So I was hoping Hizam could join and we do a little nudging convincing, but I know he's making progress with the Silva project. And by the way, maybe we could look at reviews and just see if there's some activity that we can review in his absence. Let's see. Silva, searching on the other document here. Daniel, anything new in the territory of NetGraph Buddy and such? Because that keeps coming up, and I believe it's DCH who very much thinks things should be easy. What a concept.
Yeah. I don't know. My FreeBSD journal article already came out, right? Actually, I don't
That's
even
a very
know.
good question. Do those have any discoverability? I can never find stuff when searching for topics it has, and it pains me.
Yeah,
Did I
let's
say
see
it
if
out
we-
loud? Oops. I'm looking for a link for Silva. The repo should be not too hard to find.
Yeah, it's out.
It's
So
out.
that came
Drop a
out.
link
Yeah.
if you have it. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so NetGraph for the rest of us is
Oh, I like that. I like that.
is the article. And I go over the typical ways to getting NetGraph working and why I made my thing and why people might want to use it. Yeah, there's some bugs. There's a VLAN bug that I actually encountered several months ago, but I've got some very kind reports on GitHub. So there's definitely some development that I want to do that concurrently with some improvements to Zelta as well. Yeah, I got somebody reached out saying they have a prune, like something sort of a Zelta style, meaning don't ever, measure 3 times, cut once. Don't cause any damage. But there is going to need to be a Zelta, in the spirit of Zelta kind of pruning system at some point. Currently, I use ZFS Snap, which is a really nice tool for that. But especially with the way VMs work, a lot of times you want very few snapshots on the production machine with all your speedy disks and, prune a lot less on another one. So one of the problems that I have with the policy system, the policy systems of the typical backup tools is it's hard to get the different policies on the machines, on the various machines. So I think that metadata is actually much more important than the name of the file in terms of what needs to be pruned or not pruned. Like, if you know that there are, sufficient replicas available on your fleet, then only then do you trim items, and then maybe it's a better idea to trim 0 size snapshots to save list time, or I just think that there should be a language of metadata, not a language of naming. Obviously, you can also use a language of naming to protect certain snapshots, but that shouldn't be the only thing that's needed. So yeah, so hopefully, anyway, somebody reached out on the Zelta contact form and says they have something like that. So I hope that guy stays in touch and we can work some stuff out. But I'd also love to be part of a bhyve manager. I'd definitely be willing to commit some time and employee time from my organization to get some of that stuff done.
And I say that because you mentioned, oh, gee, a GUI would be nice. Well, it's rapidly emerging that Silva is a lovely Swiss Army knife GUI, which is not in any way competing with other things on top of bhyve. And if you've been following these calls, we've been focusing low level, like with CPU ID work, rather than pretty pictures and graphs and manageability. So if Silva is the shortest path to all these technologies, being delivered. And hey, Zomp's been delightful to work with. So be it. I mean, I absolutely would not like to see someone re-implement Zelta badly in Silva in service of it. It's like, no, please, no. If that's a reasonable statement.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the VM bhyve man does have pretty good um sort of replication patterns built into it.
It does some things very
It's
well.
Yeah, it has some limited replication abilities. It's not, I mean, that's obviously not its reason for being, but it's not bad. I've definitely used the VM bhyve replication tools because it'll automatically do that migration dance.
The cold
Replicate.
migration catch up, is that it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
No, totally. And they do that very well. And maybe there are lessons for Zelta, which might be a perfect segue to Jan asking the question, have you looked at the zRepl syntax?
zRepl does have it has like zRepl has like bookmarking and how many replicas to keep on each thingy. But it uses names. It doesn't use metadata, right?
Yes and no. It uses information. It tracks about them, and you can basically say by time interval, like keep the following intervals, and you can also say things like, oh, keep the last 10 unreplicated ones or something like that, or keep 10 unless they're not replicated. So that you're
Right.
only thinning out your snapshots after they have been replicated.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think that there should be a generic pruning language I mean, maybe that fits. Maybe that algorithm fits, and I'll just take that and make it more portable. So
if I understand correctly, it goes by snapshot creation timestamp dates for the pruning logic instead of putting it in some kind of user property. Because ZFS already tracks the wall clock of the host on creation. So unless you have a completely messed up clock, you can use the creation property, right?
Right. Like, what's the point? Why do we name all of our snapshots with I mean, for sorting, I guess.
Why do we name them
nice,
with the interval they're created on? Because that makes it easier to write a pruning logic for it. Because then, if you're willing to do multiple snapshots at almost the same time, when you have both an hourly and a daily and a monthly and a yearly snapshot occur on the same midnight or whatever. And then if you do it, it's a lot easier because then you can do pruning per kind of prefix. And they don't have to know about it, and all of them are supposed to have the same interval. That makes the math easier because then it's really just counting them instead of having to collect them into buckets, track which ones are referenced by the shorter interval already, and then only
I
kind
think
of decide which to do the accounting against.
Right. You might be explaining his joke
necessary. It's necessary, just not sufficient. So I think what would be sufficient is to guarantee that the snapshots are elsewhere in certain pruning situations. That's all. That's all I meant by adding. I want to not eliminate the idea, though I do think that the naming should be up to the person or be compatible with Chernaz or compatible with Syncoid or whatever, but also have these extra safety features built in where we're not going to tell you snapshots to delete unless you're absolutely sure that the suckers are are in the right places, or to code, to a policy that's set. Like, I seriously don't care about if it's 3 months old. I really don't care if there aren't, too close together or something.
Yeah,
Something
and you
more.
could go even further and go by the written property and kind of ignore snapshots with a written property below a threshold, even if that threshold is 0. So if the data set is
Right.
unchanged, you prune it immediately, the snapshot, because everything inside of it is already in a previous snapshot.
Yeah, Zelta already does sort of the reverse of that, and that it won't take a snapshot, or there is an option, of course. You can snapshot all you want, but it won't take it. There's an option to let's not take a snapshot every 5 seconds if the data hasn't changed. So you can actually point two Zeltas at each other, and whichever one is not read-only will automatically replicate. And then if you switch it back, the replication will automatically reverse. You just point two Zeltas at each other, and you've got not a cold migration, a cold migration with extra help, which is really useful for bhyve.
Does Zelta handle the case where you have a source you want to back up, and on the source system you destroy a data set and then create a new one with the same name, and now they clash on the destination system because the old one still has replicas of that? So move that out of the way and then kind of do it like, this is generation so and so of that data set?
There's a command to handle it called rotate, which will rename and clone the matching GUID data set. So that will solve that problem without damaging anything. But it's not.
No,
it's
it
not
doesn't.
That what?
Because if I destroy the data set on the source and create a new one, they won't have a matching GUID. It's not that I renamed the data set and want to
Right.
tie the history together. It's that I have a guest, I destroyed it, and then I have a new guest test or whatever, test 2. I destroy it, I create a new one, and now with most ZFS backup tools, your backup is broken because there's a name clash, because you have a backup of your old test system under the same name.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to. So the rotate command is for those types of situations. When there's a clash, it'll rename the target and then correct it. So, but I don't think there's any great. Yeah, I don't think there's a great way around it because ZFS itself has a problem with all that.
Yeah, the only way I can imagine to deal with it is to move it out of array with a generation counter like log file rotation.
Right.
You have to make the name available.
Yeah. Yeah, that -- rotate is something I use very commonly with bhyve. That there's
Okay, I really have to look into it then. Maybe I misunderstood what it does.
Yeah, it'll do its best to try to track down the if there's a match, there's a match. If not, it'll just move it out of the way and keep going.
Interesting. And you brought it back to bhyve. Well played. Well played.
Yeah, that's the most common use case for sure, because yeah, you got to roll back because you got the ransomware or somebody deleted log files, but log files mean something different in Microsoft Exchange, or I don't know. I've got another half dozen examples of things that I have to do in the last year.
Cool. Okay. If you have not tried Zelta, or at least taken a look at it, please take a look at Zelta. There's a link here. It is aggregated through zelta.space. And there's a repo out there.
Pretty decent wiki.
And a wiki. My gosh, you rock. And I would love to hear more about its philosophy and lessons at the OpenZFS User and Developer Summit. That said, has this inspired any questions by those present? Hazam has not been able to roll in, obviously. I've nudged him to do so, but hey, he's probably living life. But if his project Silva is a unifying framework until further notice, so be it. I think the fact that it is, I don't know if he's using the John's config file format, but that the value of that was very much emphasized, and every project shows its age from when it was created and what features are available. So being late to the game is perhaps its greatest strength right now, believe it or not. Anyhow, other ideas, topics, questions, you name it.
One of the vastly underused features of bhyve's otherwise fairly limiting config format is that you can expand names and you can define names which don't have a meaning to bhyve. So then you can say something like, I don't know, netef. You set it once and then you can expand it several times.
Oh, I see. Like a
mem
variable in the
and
configuration file or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that works. You can configure unclaimed names and use them for your own.
Cool. And yeah, there are those who have gone down the road of setting countless ZFS properties and finding that they are atomic administrative operations, and the performance to everything else unrelated to them goes out the window and pain and suffering is achieved. Other topics, questions, ideas?
Depends on how you're doing it, because that's one of the reasons why ZFS channel programs were implemented, so that you can look them up and do multiple things within the same transaction.
Yes, but pending operations, as I understand it, elsewhere need to all be sort of atomically handled, and they may be completely unrelated to renaming some metadata on one VM. So said Bapt and experiences at Gandhi. Anyway, other topics, ideas, questions, awesome news, fun stuff, t-shirt ideas, great news.
I've got a question.
Yes, please.
What's the status of digging up information on a running bhyve? I think I hit some limits with
a VM.
Like a running VM. Like it doesn't. I don't know. Like I can't. Like there's no way to find like which network device is tied to it after it starts running. bhyve control didn't produce that. But the last time I actually looked into this was probably over a year ago, so maybe things have changed. But like I think a thing that would frequently need to be known is like, give me all the details of this device, like what tap device is tied to it, what netgraph device is tied to it, and so on. So in NGBuddy, my netgraph tool, it basically doesn't work with bhyve. It just has to look for VM bhyve and then can dig that out of a configuration file, and then it can properly name the sockets so that you can see what's going on. And I was wondering if there's a way to dig that up sort of generically in a running bhyve device. For some reason, I remember like bhyve control gives you all this data, but it doesn't give you some key piece of information like that.
I assume that would be quite hard because some of that state doesn't exist in the VMM device, but in the bhyve process. Because the device emulation is mostly handled by the user space process, so it has to know which graph socket to use, which tab to use. I mean, for the tab, you can see the process ID in the IF config status, right?
Right.
So you can tie it back that way, but yeah, the state is
Variable.
distributed. Part of it is in the kernel, part of it is in the process.
So if you had to do it, what would you do? You'd like scan for which handles are open in the process or something like that?
No, that's very expensive to do.
Right, yeah.
And requires quite a lot of basically root privileges because you have to do the equivalent of a proc-f on each of the candidates or something like that. You don't want to basically grab through the process namespace, right? What I would try to do is, if I know that everything is managed by my tooling, would try to use name embedding as far as possible so that I don't have to keep a mapping because the names are bijective mappings, right? So I have a mapping from interface name to gaps and back.
Like naming
So
your
I know
snapshots
that,
with metadata? But
that doesn't help you. Oh, if I have a network interface and the network interface at least has a description set which has the full name, that's quite helpful. The problem is that a lot of stuff in the network configuration can be named, but the names are very short. Like, for example, interface names are restricted to 16 bytes, and that includes the terminating null byte. So you have just 15 bytes. That's not something we can easily change because that would break the ABI, both the FreeBSD and the Linux ABI, because Linux also has this length restriction. I don't know the length restriction for netgraph hooks and nodes. I would be surprised if it's much higher. Maybe it's 32 or something like that, but I can't imagine that you could put hundreds of bytes in there. No, not 32 bits.
sorry.
Yeah.
And let me guess, if you had an absolutely verbose bhyve configuration file, one a human or a process could modify the state and then suddenly in an attempt to achieve idempotency, you don't have a great way to realign things, if that's where you're headed with this.
And that's just a configuration file. It doesn't magically stay in sync with the
Exactly.
running configuration.
Exactly, that's my point. And of course, it doesn't set up networking. It just says, I'm going to hope this thing exists and I'll fail if it doesn't. So, whew. Do check that again, that jails call for the jail descriptors information, because that's a baby step towards jails being aware of events taking place and reacting to them, which might have some parallels in bhyve. Obviously, a VM has its like somewhat fixed networking and it's somewhat fixed storage, unless you're using VirtIO, SCSI, etc. But naturally, we'd love that all to be malleable, round trippable, dynamic, but we're not there yet.
As far as I know, you should be able to get KQ events on file creation in /dev VMM.
Okay.
So basically, you treat the character device if you want to learn about it. So that shouldn't require active podding.
Okay.
And then
Can you think of a use case? Like what type of change would be valuable to your bhyve management system?
If you have a proper tool managing your bhyve VMs, it's just supposed to be the bhyve process's parent process, know its child process IDs, and know which one is which at runtime. And you would go for something like your web interface, point and click, and it's not a problem in that case. It becomes a problem when you have multiple parts which are not tightly integrated, having to respond to stuff like, I don't know, disk provisioning and network provisioning and so on. If you try to make it all reactive instead of having a centralized control logic, As long as your whole guest network configuration is provided by your bhyve management wrapper, it's fine. It's not a problem. But this would be useful with like kind of watching out for the VMN devices if you want to have some form of, let's say, a monitoring system which just wants to know which guests run on the system. And you don't want to configure it. You don't want it to be tied into your management front end. Instead, you just wanted to know about bhyve. And even if you run it on the command line, it should work.
And as there are half illumos people here, is there a kernel event framework in illumos that might benefit from tracking dev VMM device changes?
I would assume that it's all service management facility doing this stuff. So if SMF does it for you, why would you care about responding to the event if you can just say tie it to some kind of unit or service definition?
You're not sure on that. That's way lower level than I usually deal with.
But yeah, the available metadata has always been limited. Go ahead.
It's usually done in zones in illumos. But whether that suits that particular problem, I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, most of the information is stored in the zone config, but that's going to show the status that it is when it boots, not necessarily the status it is when it's running. So you can make that change, and the changed version will be what you're going to start seeing, but it's not going to affect the actual running VM.
Can you reconcile those days into your boot time, post boot?
Michael, if I understood him correctly, it doesn't. The zone configuration shows you the current zone configuration, not the zone configuration as you started it. So you're seeing the current configuration, not the startup time configuration. So it's just whatever is in your config files.
Yeah. So for example, if I have a VM running and I want to change the amount of RAM assigned to it, I can go in, change that, but it's not going to take effect until I reboot the VM.
This information you can read out with bhyve CTL. If you want to know this kind of stuff, but for example, it doesn't give you the information which bridge is the tap device a member of.
Well, you can certainly look at that information in illumos based on its own configuration and run DLAVM to look at the VNix. So.
Yeah, on FreeBSD you can also find that out, but it's not bhyve specific. It's just okay, I have my guest name. Now I have the guest name, ID. I can find the tab interfaces open, but that if they're not named meaningfully, it's just tab some number. It shouldn't be. You should either rename the interface or at least set a description or possibly both, so that you have something easy to go by. And then you can just ask, okay, which bridge contains this? Yeah.
Okay. Other topics, questions, ideas, t-shirt ideas. Well, we've covered some good ground. I'll say it again, Hans, thank you so much for your work. Andrew, would you like the honors? Everyone's muted. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Talk to me next week. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.